Last year, when most investors were watching their stocks plummet, one Wall Street legend had an unfair advantage that was identifying winning stocks with massive upside, like Riot Blockchain before it shot up 10,000%, Digital Turbine before it shot up 789%, and Overstock before it shot up over 1,000%. This power gauge comes from the legendary Mark Chaikin. And right now you can get a free in-depth look at how his power gauge system works. A way to type in any of the 4,000 different tickers and see exactly where the stock is most likely to go next and in any type of market. Simply go to powergaugetrial.com for your free look. Again, that's powergaugetrial.com for your free look. All right, let's get to our segment today. Hi, this is Daniela Cambone, and welcome back to the Daniela Cambone Show here on Stansberry Research. Our summer series continues, and let me tell you folks, I have brought on a guest because I have read the emails through all the years saying, please have this man on. I think he tops all requests of all time, so we're finally making it happen today. So please welcome to the show, Gregory Mannarino of traderschoice.net. Greg, so nice to finally meet you. Welcome to my show.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I think it's going to be just fantastic.
Me too. And just a preface, I just want to say we have tried to connect in the past, but timing and life and whatever just got in the way. So this is the perfect moment to have Greg on.
Yeah.
So it's our first time speaking. Set up the landscape for us of where you think we're headed. So let's start by talking about the Fed. I know this is one of your favorite topics of conversation. As we're speaking, there's talk that 100 basis points may be on the table for the next meeting. When you hear this, what do you think?
I don't think 100 basis points is going to happen, honestly. I probably another 75. But, in the grand scheme of things, what does it really matter anyway? What are they trying to do? They're selling people an epic lie. I think it's the biggest lie or deceptive management policy regarding inflation in the history of the freaking world here. They're trying to convince people, it's insane to me. They're trying to convince people that by nudging the federal funds rate, incrementally, it's really going to help inflation. We're going to be fantastic. It's going to be great for everybody. How about no? All this is doing is guaranteeing inflation is continue to surge higher. They know it. And I think anyone with a functioning brain cell, just one, realizes that's the same story here. But it's not going to change here. The current environment is so twisted and so upside down. It's very difficult to make heads or tails of what's going on. But what we do realize, I think we should all know, is central banks are not done. They're going to continue to inflate. They're going out of their way to create more inflation. They're strangling to death an entire class of people. Have been pushing this narrative now for I don't know how many years. And it's in our face. It's going on right now. It's going to get worse. And people need to prepare for a worst case scenario. The global economy is in free fall. And the action of central banks proves it. Look at what they're doing. The European Central Bank now with unlimited bond buying. You got the Federal Reserve with some kind of backdoor program here to buy all the debt, and that's what their goal is, to own it all. That's the goal of central banks in aggregate, is to continue to buy assets with their own product that they just magically created out of thin air. So that's the scenario. That's where we stand right now. We have a managed market. We have central banks in here trying to control the yield curve, continuing to inflate global debt on an unprecedented scale here. And then you have the propaganda ministry, the mainstream media, playing the game, reading their scripts out here, trying to convince people that what they're seeing with their own eyes isn't real.
So let's just hone in on the inflation talk. Is it a hoax for you? Is it real? What are your thoughts really on, inflation over 9%? Is it because we've just manifested it because we've been talking about it for so long? Oh, the inflation's so bad. Oh, prices are so high. I mean, what's your take on inflation specifically?
Well, this is a no-brainer here. We've had central banks here for now well over a decade doing nothing but inflate, creating cash out of thin air, buying assets with it, It was only a matter of time here before all of this money creation was going to present the current issues that we have. It's economics 101. It's all of these extra bills existing in either digital or physical form here, finally chasing the same amount of goods. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. And their own numbers are just all nonsense anyway. I think everyone realizes that, the data is all fake. It's interesting. We just recently found out, this is laughable. They're saying, what was this last week? I think it was reported that food inflation year over year is just up 10.4%. How many people are paying just 10.4% more for their food? I think it's more like it's over 50, maybe in some cases 100% more.
Absolutely.
So it's just more the deception, more the distraction. But this just is so simple to understand. The goal here of central banks is to foster in a new system, period, the end. And how they're doing this is by strangling people to death via surging inflation. That's why they continue to go out of their way to create more of it. And what's going to happen? At one point, people are going to say, I've had enough. What did we also find out recently? 75% of middle income, by their own data, 75% of middle income earners here in the United States, they can't make it anymore. You got a stock market that has been rallying recently off the continuing bad economic news. It's astonishing to see. Nothing makes sense. If you really sit back and understand what's happening, then it will make sense to you. The system is designed seriously to destroy an entire class of people, create more inflation, push wealth up to the one percenters, and then a new system is going to be instituted.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What's the end game? Like, why would they want to strangle an entire class of people? What do they want to get to?
Control. It's all about control. They're trying to make people dependent on the system. More people that become dependent on the system makes the system stronger. So what they're doing here, and I've outlined this, I don't know, for several years, is trying to get previous members of the middle class and force them to the lower rung of society here. What else do we know? I mean, by their own numbers here, we'll use their own numbers. The savings rate is now negative. We have people now here, personal debt, household debt, consumer debt continuing to skyrocket with no end in sight. And what they're trying to sell people is a very interesting thing. They're trying to tell people that swelling debt, either on a micro level, which is the individual, or on a macro scale globally, is growth. They're trying to twist this into some kind of another mind-bending scheme that inflating global debt is inflating global growth. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. We know for a fact, again by their own numbers, that the global economy is contracting at its fastest pace ever. But again, the deceptions, the lies, the distractions, the look here, don't look here, it's going to get a lot worse.
I want to just hone in on something else. I've heard you in past interviews say that you always look to interest rates as a guide as to where the stock market is headed. So what's your take on the S&P? Where do we go from here?
Well, look what they're trying to do here. It's astonishing to me. 2 weeks ago, we had that uncontrolled sell-off in the bond market. That 10-year yield started to spike. We were above 3.5%. In fact, we went up like 60 basis points in 2 days. And that put a lot of pressure on the stock market. Just by coincidence that the European central banks started buying more debt, and they increased that 3 times now so far. Now they went from increasing buying debt to increasing more, to increasing even more than that, to now unlimited. And now the Fed's obviously following suit. Look at the 10-year yield today. It's getting bought up. The 10-year yield is dropping. It's an astonishing set of dynamics. And what they're trying to do, very simply, is send a signal to the market saying, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to continue to buy the debt. We're going to continue to suppress rates. So start buying here. Who knows where this can go? Look, nothing matters anymore. When you have central banks buying it all, fostering that risk-on environment, meaning pushing cash into the stock market, earnings don't matter, forward guidance doesn't matter, PE ratios don't matter, bad economic news doesn't matter. You see, what people need to understand is there's no connection between what the stock market is doing and the economy. Okay, there's a big gap here. The stock market can go up and the economy will continue to free fall here. That gap is probably going to get wider. Look, what do? We try to at least understand the dynamics that are in play, realizing that central banks are going to continue to inflate, and then take the opposite side of that trade. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be back here in the market. I've been buying heavily. I'm back in the market at this present time. So, look, just try to understand the current situation and take advantage of it. That's really what we need to do.
I'm happy you mentioned the yield curve, the inversion between the 10-year and the 2-year rate reached its highest point since 2000. Some would say this is a clear sign that we're on the brink of a recession, but would you argue we've already begun the recession?
I would argue that we're way worse off than a recession here right now. Oh, the economic news that they're telling us is clear on that. The fact that people are suffering and they continue to suffer moving forward here, and they continue to borrow beyond their eyeballs, dancing their way into destitution is what I've been saying recently here. They're enjoying their last hurrah. And until they go down into that lower rung of society and become slaves to the system. That's what it is. Yeah, sure. Yield curve is inverted. It's extremely inverted at this point here, but that doesn't tell me, or I don't think anyone that follows my work or who understands what's happening, anything. We realize that the economy globally is over. It's in free fall. It's not going to stop. And every mechanism you can dream about and things you can't even think about yet are going to be thrown at people in this new economic model. The new economic model is going from crisis to crisis to crisis so they can pull more cash out of the future, whether it means, allowing central banks to continue to buy all the debt for which they can do anything they want. They have no oversight here. Whatever it might be, another disease process or another variant, they got to throw cash at that. Expanding wars, they got to throw cash at that. Now we have this bill that's going through the Senate to subsidize the semiconductor industry here, which is essentially a backdoor bailout. I think people should understand that as well. And every other mechanism possible to continue to pull cash from the future. What people don't know, what the biggest secret is, it's in everyone's face, is that that's the system. It demands that debt be fueled, added to the current situation exponentially in order to function. Without doing that, it's over. The system demands that debt be created every day by every mechanism possible, henceforth crisis to crisis to crisis and everything else they can come up with.
Does the new monetary system you speak of include a digital dollar?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the ultimate thing. What they're going to do eventually is go to a completely digital system where every single transaction is going to be tracked down to the 10,000th of a cent here. So look, the new system is very simple to understand. You can see it unfolding now. They're going to go after people's freedoms and liberties more so. They're going to exert a lot more control on people. And I think their end game here is to, this may sound extreme, but to reduce the population of the world by a large margin here. To again, go ahead.
Sorry, when you say they though, are you speaking like central banks?
Central banks, yeah. They is the government. We have a one world government today. They is central banks. They control it all. They control the monetary system. They run the economy. They run it all. The puppets that they put there as figureheads, okay, they're just there as for something to people to look towards because they believe that is they are people that are actually pulling the strings, but it has no bearing on reality whatsoever. Central banks have unified, none more so than the Fed and the European Central Bank, and they're running the entire world economy. They're running it into the ground by design.
And to that point, if we just look at the evolution of Jerome Powell, right? He came in as Jerome the Hawk. Then he kind of transformed into Jerome the Dove. Then it was Jerome the steroid pusher. Then it was just Jay, right? So it's like, well, who is he really, right? And to your point, is it just, pushing whatever narrative and agenda has to be pushed at that moment?
Yeah, and it's not going to stop. I mean, look, what people need to understand, at its core, the system, number one, as I said, is debt-based. It's a debt-based economic model. It must be fueled with more debt. It can't ever stop. Once we stop the moment, see, we could end the system. You see my hat back here in the Fed? We could end the Federal Reserve and every central bank in a nanosecond. If we just prevented them from issuing one single dollar of more debt, just $1, the entire system would implode. That's why they got to come up with reasons to continue to pull cash from the future and sell it to the public. I mean, we just heard from the World Bank. World Bank is saying that developed nations around the world must support impoverished nations, or the global poverty issue is going to get worse. Well, I have a little clue for everyone who's listening to the global poverty issue is designed to get worse, much, much worse. And no amount of cash conjured up out of thin air being created by a central bank is going to fix the problem. The underlying issue is the debt-based economic model, and they will never let it go. Central banks have established the debt-based economic model to exert power. They have one product, central banks, and that is their ability to issue and manipulate debt. That's it. That's their only tool. You hear about Jerome Powell, for example, talking about tools in this toolbox. They have one tool. It's how they can manipulate the debt, and that's it. So that's another lie that's being, the Fed has tools. Oh, they're going to help everyone. The Federal Reserve and other central banks right now are on a mission to fulfill their final solution. Their final solution, and that should sound familiar to people, that term here I'm using, is again to exert maximum control on the population of the world. And this does involve a new system of maximum control, completely digital system. And at that point, again, look, they're not done. They won't be done with what they're doing now until they've managed to put whoever's left, members of the middle class, in such a way that they're going to be forced into that lower rungs of society and be forced to be a slave to the system here. This three-tier society that we have here, including a middle class, this is a new thing. It's only a couple of centuries old here. And it's going away. I've been explaining to people that we are going back into a feudal system, a two-tier society that's part of the big plan. And that is, again, extreme control. And unfortunately, people are being lulled into this. And I think willingly, in a lot of ways, people can't make it anymore. They can't survive, so they become slaves to the systems, which is the end game, which is the goal, the final solution, to create slaves, to create a world of slaves.
Okay, well, that said, and you've definitely laid out the landscape for us loud and clear. You see the global economy in free fall. I want to know Gregory Mannarino's game plan right now, what you're buying, how you protect yourself, how you not become dependent on the system. Mm-hmm. So let's start with, you said you're buying stocks right now, correct?
I'm buying one asset right now. You want me to cover that? I'm buying an exchange traded fund, ticker JEPI. This is it pays a monthly dividend over 9%, and that's pretty substantial. And you get paid monthly on it. Here, I think it's a nice place to put cash right now in an environment where it's kind of difficult to figure out what's going on. But the bigger picture is really looking at the end game. What do we know is going on? It's very simple. We have swelling global debt. It's ballooning, and it will continue to balloon until we get a bursting of that debt bubble, the debt market hyper bubble, which is being fueled by design. The larger they can make the global debt bubble, the bigger the bang when it eventually bursts. And we witnessed it. We witnessed some of it when we had that uncontrolled sell-off in that 10-year yield. And then, of course, central banks got in here and started managing the yield curve more so than they were already here. And they're going to continue to do that. But it doesn't come without a cost. The cost here is more inflation, quite obviously. So what people need to do, look, not everyone has the ability or maybe even should be in an exchange-traded fund or in the stock market. What people need to do, in my view, is realize that we're in this environment of swelling debt here and just take the opposite side of that trade, that is being real things. I've been explaining to people since I started well over a decade ago to hold hard assets, physical silver, my favorite asset of all time, physical gold here, because eventually how I see this playing out, it should make sense to people. Let's put this together real quick. If just to clarify, eventually we're going to get a meltdown in the debt market, and this is not going to be by accident. It's being fueled by design. What I mean by a meltdown in the debt market is an uncontrolled spike in bond yields. Okay. And what that's going to do is exert pressure on the stock market, the complete opposite of what we've been witnessing since the meltdown of 2008. So if you get an uncontrolled sell-off in the debt market, you'll see yields spike very rapidly, like we witnessed with the 10-year yield, 60 basis points in like 2 days. Okay. And what's going to happen is that'll put pressure on the stock market, and cash is just going to move into other assets. It doesn't go to money heaven. Cash moves from one set of assets into another set of assets. And in my opinion, gauging from this scenario, it should be pretty easy to understand. A sell-off in the debt market will precede a sell-off in the stock market. You have to understand too, the debt market is the driver of everything, even the stock market. The stock market itself is a derivative as to what's going on here, as everything prices off of what's happening in the debt market, which is the largest aspect of the market altogether. Okay, so by understanding that, we can pretty much understand where other assets are going to go. When we get that implosion in the debt market, stocks will sell off and cash is just going to move into, I believe, into commodities. And I think the most suppressed asset in the history of the world is silver.
Physical silver. Yeah.
So,
I want to ask you about this. As you know, I've covered, silver and gold a long time. And on the flip side, I would say, well, Greg, we've been hearing this for so long that, when inflation comes, gold's going to be the ultimate hedge. In times of crisis, gold's the ultimate hedge, protector, wealth preservation, whatever. Why isn't gold higher? Why isn't silver higher? Where's my triple digit silver?
well, it's very simple to understand. In a real market, it should be the actual asset that determines value of a derivative. And a derivative is something that derives value from an underlying asset. How the market is set up right now is the derivative is dictating the price of the physical asset. This is set up, obviously, to keep the price of precious metals suppressed. Now, good. I say let them play their game. I've been telling people this for the longest time, and it's not just this is an inflation hedge here. What people need to think about here is the bigger picture. Again, the macro picture is right now the environment remains risk on. The S&P 500 isn't even in bear market territory anymore. We came out of bear market territory just a couple of days ago. Is it going to stay that way? Who knows? Central banks have unlimited firepower, but at a cost. Higher inflation. So again, going back to my end game scenario, which is the meltdown in the debt market, puts pressure on the stock market, and cash moves from risk on, meaning equities, into risk off, commodities. And I think commodities across the board have the potential to balloon. And I mean probably go up exponentially from where we are now. And because everyone's going to rush to the door at the same time, it's always the same story, and everyone's going to want to hold these assets at the same time too. So use right now the game that's being played by the banks like J.P. Morgan, none more so, to keep the price of gold and silver suppressed. So that's the story. That's how I see it going on. Yeah.
But how does that play out? Does manipulation end one day? They're caught, or the game just keeps on going?
Well, look, these big institutions, they can pretty much do whatever they want at this particular time. And I think what they're doing here. What do we know is going on? It's always about what we know. I believe that people that really understand the system, especially the wealthy here, believe me, they're not just all in cash. These people, most of them, anyone that I know that has any kind of net worth here. Unfortunately, most people in this country do not have a net worth. They're in the negative if they zero out what they owe. But people with a positive net worth, I would say every single one of these people that I know already has a nice stash of physical gold and maybe more so physical silver as well, platinum and palladium. I think all of these things. So look, everyone's who understands what's happening at least should realize that this global debt issue it's not sustainable, nor is it meant to be. They need to, and they will, bring the global financial system to its knees to institute that new system we were speaking about just a little while ago of maximum control. But understanding, again, the scenario, implosion in debt market, Stock market melts down, cash moves into commodities. That's eventually how it's going to happen. And take advantage of the price rigging. Look, everybody knows it. Like you said, it's on the front page of every freaking mainstream media outlet. Oh, this bank has been caught spoofing metals. Oh, this bank has got caught rigging this. It's everywhere. It's common knowledge. But even, look, even the commodities exchange realizes it's going on. And, sure, these banks, oh, they're blameless. Oh, we're going to pay a fine, but we're not going to admit to any wrongdoing. This is the same scenario over and over again. Or maybe they get some low-level flunky, to take the heat. But understanding the mechanism, I think, should very, very simple to realize, at least in how I believe it's going to play out. I can't see it happening another way.
I don't want to forget this point about cash. You said cash. So I want to understand your take on how much cash to have via your precious metals. Is it 50-50? I mean, how much are you in the system? How much are you out? What's a nice balance for you?
Well, you don't want to be in cash at all. I mean, if you have that power to be in as little actual cash as possible, look, what do we got? We got a dollar here whose relative strength or comparative strength it continues to gain in this environment here because the dollar still remains the prettiest lady at the ball. But the fact of the matter is the dollar's absolute strength or its purchasing power is dissolving. So why would anyone want to be staying in a dissolving asset? I think you got to be nuts. You got to find ways at least to make your cash grow. And henceforth, why? I've been putting a lot of cash to work in JEPI, which pays a big fat monthly dividend. So, and also it gives you exposure to the market. I'm not telling anyone to buy this. I'm an open book. I tell everyone what I'm doing. Right or wrong, I've made a lot of bad calls as of late trying to get my head around this crazy market. I understand that. But, that's the way it is. For years and years and years, we've all done really, really well. And once in a while, you got to take a step back from all this, and that's fine. I also feel, look, and I'm going to say this, I'm probably going to get heat for it. I believe, like, for example, the beating that we've seen lately in cryptocurrencies, I really feel that this is a place to be. I actually exited all of my crypto positions several weeks ago. I announced this publicly. I will be getting back in here. About 4 days ago, I had explained it looked like a good buying point for Bitcoin, and since that time, it's taken off. And I think there's a lot more upside here. But I want people to don't listen to a thing that Greg Mannarino says. I want people to do their own research, okay? Everything I said here in this interview here, I want people to think about it, ponder it, do your own research, and then act accordingly. That's it. I'm just a guy out here with an opinion, and I want people to come up with their own conclusions.
Well, we like having different opinions on the show, and that's why I had you on. Just a final thought on the crypto. So you said you're getting back in. Are you, what do you like? Do you like Bitcoin, Ethereum, other cryptos?
I owned all the big ones up until kind of recently. I will probably, and I haven't done this yet, but I'm planning on doing this. I'm planning on getting back in by buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the mommy. It's the mother of them all. I'm not saying it's the best or the worst. It's just one of the many cryptos that people can expose themselves to. But again, this goes back to what I said. Do your own research on these things here as a way to, look, people got to get over the get rich quick schemes. And a lot of people get caught up in those kind of things. Oh, I'm going to buy Bitcoin at 24,000. It's going to go to 50,000. It very well may do that. It may go much higher than that. Some of my closest friends who are heavily into cryptocurrencies believe that Bitcoin $100,000 or even $250,000 is within reach and reality. Me, I don't think of it that way. I look at it as, okay, is this a place where I'd want to put my cash back to work in an environment where I believe we're going to get a meltdown in that debt market? Is cash going to move into cryptocurrencies during that meltdown, which will occur, and I believe it firmly will, in the debt market, putting pressure on the stock market, going into commodities? I also believe it's going to go into cryptocurrencies as well. I've never deviated from that. I needed personally to take a step back from this market. I dumped not just my crypto positions, but I dumped my stock positions too. I got myself caught up in a bad kind of a loop for a while, and I was like, you know what? It's time to step out of the markets, all of it. Try to get a perspective on it again, regroup, and move forward. That's what you got to do.
And I hear what you're saying, but I'm surprised that you wouldn't be more in cash then to step in for these buying ops?
No. I mean, look, right now, like I said, I'm doing a lot of buying in JEPI, which pays that big fat dividend until I can get myself back together again. I don't think it's a bad idea right now. And I said this several days ago. I said it looked like a good buying point for Bitcoin, and has done well since that time. Look, the bottom line for people is pretty simple. They have to find what works for them. There's a lot of people that don't want anything to do with a cryptocurrency at all. They believe it's going to zero, whatever, and they're entitled to their own opinion. And for all we know, they may be correct. But what people need to understand is the biggest thing that I look at is the eventual, again, implosion of the debt bubble and how that's going to play out. And I think the most likely scenario is, again, cash is just going to look for some place to go once the debt market melts down, stock market melts down with it, and cash is just going to move. It's going, and that's another thing too. I don't want anyone to throw every single dime they have into any one particular asset. You should be somewhat diversified, okay? I know there's a lot of people, I'm all in on this asset. I'm all in on that asset. And that, look, like I said, people got to make up their own decisions, but exposing yourself to one particular asset, it could be a problem if it goes the wrong way. Because look, a lot of what we're talking about here, look, none of this is written in stone. This is just a matter of putting a perspective on things, trying to understand what's the most likely scenario moving forward, and then executing a plan to capitalize on it. That's really what this whole thing comes down to.
Gregory Mannarino, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed this.
I want to ask you, it is our summer series, so how's your summer going?
My summer is freaking hot. I live out here in Vegas. It's really hot. But other than that, being hot, doing well. How about you?
Pretty good. I was going to say the UK should not complain because I saw the temperatures out there in Nevada. So I'm hoping you stay cool, Greg.
Yeah, I'm hoping I stay cool too. I'm staying inside a lot. We're going from the air-conditioned house to the air-conditioned car to the air-conditioned wherever else I go. I'm not going anywhere without air conditioning.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's not wait decades for this to happen again. Thank you so much. Come back again, okay?
Let's do it. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll have more incredible content coming your way here on the Daniela Cambone Show on Stansberry Research. So be sure to sign up at danielacambone.com so you could be alerted as when these interviews are uploaded and ready to watch. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.
Opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the contributor and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Stansberry Research, its parent company, or affiliates.